Everyone, and welcome to this session. It's my absolute pleasure to welcome you to the Circular Economy Workshop, where we're going to be exploring circularity in packaging in Africa. I'm Sarah O'Carroll, originally from Cape Town, but currently based on the Isle of Wight in the UK, where I work for the Ellen MacArthur Foundation in our policy team and leading our work with cities. Through this work, I've been working closely with ICLEI Africa over the last year on a Marva Foundation funded project to support city governments in Africa to accelerate their circular economy efforts. And I'm also one of the focal points here at the Ellen MacArthur Foundation for the African Circular Economy Alliance. I was also part of the team that worked on a suite of articles on circular economy opportunities in Africa, along with ICLEI Africa, the University of Lagos, and Chatham House that we published last year. And I volunteer with the African Circular Economy Network executive team. I've been with ACEAs since it was founded, and today I'm really here in my capacity as a volunteer with the African Circular Economy Network. For those of you that haven't been introduced to the African Circular Economy Network before, I'll just take a little bit of time to give you some background on what we are, who we are and what we do. So we were established in 2016 as a not-for-profit company registered in South Africa, and we now operate across 33 countries across Africa with over 100 experts in our network. Our purpose really is to build a restorative circular economy for Africa that generates well-being and prosperity, inclusive of all its people, through new forms of economic production and consumption, which maintains and regenerates its environmental resources. And we do that through research. We're involved in many research projects across the continent, training, knowledge sharing, networking, and also spending some time capturing circular economy case studies on the continent. We are a membership-based network that brings together circular economy practitioners from the public and private sectors, from not-for-profits, NGOs as well. And all of these circular economy practitioners have ambitions to accelerate the just transition to a circular economy in Africa through collaboration, partnership, and implementation of projects. Lara, one of my colleagues, will post some links in the chat for you to get more details on how to become part of our network, to keep up to date with our activities and the different membership options that you can apply for. So please do have a look at those for more info if you're not yet a member of the African Circular Economy Network. One of our most recent achievements is being invited to co-host this year's World Circular Economy Forum with Citra. I can say from 2016, when the African Circular Economy Network was founded, that was an ambition of ours, and it's absolutely incredible to get to this point where we are now a co-host of the World Circular Economy Forum. So this year's forum is also co-hosted by the African Circular Economy Alliance, the Republic of Rwanda, and other international partners. The World Circular Economy Forum is a global annual initiative of Finland through the Finnish Innovation Fund, Citra. And the first forum came together in 2017, and it brings together a global audience to talk about the circular economy across the world, really focusing on different circular economy topics and themes, from finance to partnership to material value chains like plastic, fashion, and food. This year, for the first time ever, the World Circular Economy Forum is going to be held in Africa. It's running from the 6th to the 8th of December in Kigali, and also online. And the theme this year is From Africa to the World, which I think is really exciting, that it's a lot about what the world can learn from circular economy in Africa. And that's so much of what today's session is about. There will be global studios that will be held online and in person in Kigali, and then also specific African studios that are being organized by the African Circular Economy Network across Africa. As you might have seen, today's online event is an official side event of the forum, and it forms part of a 5-part series that will follow the themes of the African Circular Economy Alliance's 5 Big Bets paper, which included sections on fashion and textiles, food systems, electronics, packaging, and built environment. And these have all are taking place over a 5-month period in the lead up to the forum in December. And I'm sure Lara or colleagues will also share some details about other events in the chat or in a follow-up email after this event. The aim of today's workshop is really to build momentum for World Circular Economy Forum in December and to stimulate conversation on circularity in packaging and the packaging industry in Africa. And we're going to do this by focusing on a few successful circular initiatives in the industry and talking through barriers and opportunities that we have observed. Before we really get kickstarted with the session, we always need to do some housekeeping. So here we go. If you haven't noticed yet, I want to make you aware that we are recording this session, and that's so that it can be available both to people who are here today that want to watch it again, but also for those that can't be with us today. And so by staying online, you are consenting to being recorded. We would also really welcome you to be very active in the chat and open discussion that we'll be having later on in the session. So please do share any questions or comments that you have in the chat. The more we share, the more we can learn from one another, and that really makes the discussion more fruitful and interesting for everyone. Also, want to just say that we don't all have to agree, that you have a different opinion to something that one of the panelists or presenters is saying today. Please do also feel free to share different opinions. That's what makes for an interesting conversation. Please then also do introduce yourself in the chat and your organization. If you haven't, it would be great if you could also rename yourself so that we can also get a sense of who is with us here in this digital room. A recording of the session and a summary of the session will be provided afterwards, that will include learnings and some conclusions from the session. So without kind of further ado, I will introduce Radia, our moderator for today's session. Radia is the African Circular Economy Network's network coordinator. She's based in Lusaka in Zambia and holds a bachelor's and honors in economics. She is very passionate about the role that circular economy can play in future sustainable development. If we could mute ourselves as well while we're not speaking, that's really helpful. So Radia is really passionate about the role that the circular economy can play on the African continent. And she has already made a significant impact in the industry by co-founding the Ulubutu recycling initiative, and she's been a judge on the Afri Plastics Challenge. Her role at the African Circular Economy Network includes building networks and partnerships with local and global organizers while supporting the transition to a circular economy in Africa. So that's more than enough from me. Radia, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Sarah. I think you've said pretty much everything I was going to say in my introduction, but good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our packaging workshop. I am glad to be your moderator today. I think we're 10 minutes into the start time, so I'll go straight into what we should expect from today's program. So I will be your moderator, as Sarah has highlighted. We will first look at some case studies from 2 individuals or 2 businesses that have put circularity at the center of what they do. And then we'll then segue into our panel discussion. I'll introduce our different panelists that are with us today. And then after the panel discussions, if we have questions, we'll have Q&A and then an open discussion. Please feel free to raise your hands or post your questions as we go along in the program. You can post your questions in the chat and they will all be tackled during the Q&A session. We hope to be done just before or slightly after 5 p.m. So without, again, taking much of your time, we'll get started with the program. We'll get right into the program. So nearly 60% of the goods consumed by the modern individual being yourself and yourself, requires some form of packaging. And although packaging is convenient for a lot of things, it is designed using the linear process, which generates a significant amount of waste and pollution. But as the demand for convenient good increases, so will the urgency to shift towards sustainability and circularity within the packaging industry, because whether we like to admit it or not, we do need packaging for a lot of things. And rather than get rid of it, I think it would be important to think about including circularity in how we design our packaging. To kickstart our conversation, again, I highlighted this earlier, we'll hear from two individuals in Africa that have put circularity at the center of their business. Our first speaker that I would like to introduce is Victor Komolafe. He's the co-founder and the chief executive officer at Givo, a circular economy startup leveraging technology to collect, process, and upcycle recyclables into valuable products. Welcome, Victor. Thank you for joining us today. I will hand the floor over to you to tell us a little bit more about what you do.
Okay, thank you very much for the introduction, and thanks for having me here. I'm just going to start this presentation by sharing a short video, and then I would continue with my conversation. Sorry, give me a second. Okay.
Nigeria is one of the largest consumers of plastic in Africa, generating over 17.5 million tons of plastic.
Okay. So I'm just gonna take it back a bit.
Consumers of plastic in Africa, generating over 17.5 million tons of plastic waste annually. This has led to the disposal of waste in open landfills next to residential areas, causing soil contamination, blocked drainage networks, high carbon emissions, and increased spread of pathogens. There are currently no efficient systems for waste management in Nigeria or advanced technology applications. Givo is tackling this problem by establishing modular recycling centers, known as Givo centers, within communities across Nigeria. Each Givo center is community-based, youth and women-led, and created to aggregate and process recyclables into useful products. Collected directly from waste generators, that is households, each Givo center collects up to 90 metric tons of recyclables every year, diverting these materials. A key innovative component of our solution is the application of advanced IoT technology to digitize our collection process, track recyclables collected and processed, optimize our operations, and generate data on high waste consumption patterns within communities.
Okay, thank you very much for that. So that was a brief summary.
With Elon's Tesla revolutionizing the entire car industry, his Boring Company making tunneling
so that was a brief
than ever.
summary on what Givo is, and I want to just go straight into my presentation for today. So we started this about 3 years ago. Sorry, let me go into this. Okay, so on this presentation, I'm just going to speak a little bit about what we've been doing through Givo, our journey in the last 3 years, and how that has had an impact in circularity, especially on this side of town. So yeah, we're a circular economy company, of course. We focus on the use of technology, especially Internet of Things and artificial intelligence in the collection of data, right? So for us, we've always understood that the data is a bigger part than the material actually. When we go into this space, these were a few of the things we highlighted and we strived to prefer, and our solution is striving to fix. The poor waste management, of course, sticks out with packaging. In Africa, there's the infrastructure that doesn't exist. The unemployment rate in the parts where we're based in sub-Saharan Africa. And of course, the data, the industry data is a big part of the opportunity that we saw, but is also a hindrance in this case. Since about May 2019 to date, we've done quite a few things. We actually started this project in response to a Coca-Cola funded program. We were the only technology company that was selected across Africa. There were about 9 other organizations. We came in with our background in technology into this space, and we kind of, in that week-long program, kind of saw the opportunity here, and we haven't left since then. And so we've done a lot of things around manufacturing first. We did a lot of things around building platforms before we eventually, in the last few months, in the last year, moved into collection from communities. Of course, because of the way we enter this space, again, first of all, through a workshop, but also understanding and the problem, we're able to design a solution that ticks a lot of the SDG boxes, and we track this regularly, relying on our use of tech, of course. Everything revolves around these Jivo centers, right? So we have these in communities across Nigeria. And the major things to know from these is they're powered by solar. They employ about 10 to 15 people, and they operate in a 2-kilometer radius, right? So typically we have our staff members collecting the materials from the community, and we pay them an incentive, about $10 per annum. Now, this centers are able to generate about $45,000 in revenue a year, and able to again pay the incentives, pay for the workers that live there, that work there, and also everything that is done here is green. So it's solar powered. All the collections are done not using any fossil fuel, right? So walking, and we have electric powered tricycles for the collection. Again, this is how our system works, and there's a system map further down. But I mean, we're scaling this up by franchising. We're trying to have 1,000 of these in about 5 years. That is the goal across sub-Saharan Africa. As you can see, we have a hardware and software solution. So there's a IoT play and artificial intelligence. And of course, we do mobile payments. So again, no cash, is digital payments, USSD, and so many things. And last but not least, we actually recycle the material into a final product within those compartments, which actually, it's a recycling operation and not just a material aggregation operation. This is a system map. I might not have so much time to go through it, but again, the key things to highlight is a lot of our work has to do with, again, advocacy, education, which is the first 2 parts, and then of course the processing, which is from the collections to the output. The data is also very key, and how we communicate that data to our different stakeholders is one of the things that makes us to be unique. These are some of the IoT elements that I mean we've used in our operations, and I've spoken about some of them. And the video I showed earlier had some of them in action. I would speak about certain ones if I have to during the presentation, but I don't want to dwell too much on it. So yeah, these are just some snapshots from our platforms that we have. So this is, for example, a depositor platform. So in those 2-kilometer radiuses where we're based, our depositors are able to go and see their reports, what is the carbon effect on that, what is their incentives they get, how do they convert that for points, for airtime, to buy food, to buy whatever. So we have a digitized platform for that. Of course, we also have a back end for our operations, for the franchisees, for the centers that we're in. And that's how we're able to monitor and control whatever is going on in every center in real time. So this is why we can also, for example, rely on things like carbon credits, plastic credits, and so many other things. These are just some of the metrics that we've had, and this is from this year's operations, and this might need to be updated soon. I just want to touch on here too, because it's really important, just to say that, yeah, right now, a lot of what I and a lot of recyclers in Africa deal with is the commodity trading, but really where there's opportunity and potential I see is in the data collection, because there's the access to the carbon credits and the other things, and they're also understanding consumer markets. These are things you can get from recyclable material. Last but not least, over the last 3 years, again, like I mentioned, we started with manufacturing. So we kind of try to understand the circular economy from a 360 angle, from a collection all the way through to processing. And so, yeah, during COVID, we kind of used some collected materials we had to start making things. So we started with a PPE. You can see that's a lady from the a street sweeper using our product down there that we gave for free during COVID. We made abacuses and other things. And yeah, and since then, we then produced other things like plastic sheets. So that that table is actually on my balcony, and we've produced for some certain offices and so on and so forth. So yes, for us, of course, the data is the most important thing, but it's also about trying to maximize value throughout the chain, from your collections through to your processing, and also again having a final output that then tells a story. And yes, thank you very much for your time. These are a few of our partners that we've worked on in the last few years. And yeah.
Thank you very much, Victor. It's always interesting to hear what other young people are doing across Africa to champion circularity in our everyday life. I think it was also interesting to hear how you're using tech, both tech, but also low-tech solutions to do the work that you're doing. So for our audience, Victor will be part of our panel discussions. Also, if you have questions for him, please feel free to post them in the chat and we'll tackle them as we go along. Thank you, Victor. Our next case study is someone from Haya Bioplastics. So Mark Musinguzi co-founded Haya Bioplastics, primarily as a research project focused on converting water hyacinth invasive aquatic plant into biodegradable packaging. Welcome, Mark. Welcome to our discussion today.
Yes, thank you so much. I am hoping that you can all hear me. So I'm going to jump straight to my presentation. Yes, so yeah, my name is Mark Musinguzi. I'm the team lead of Haya Bioplastics. We are a company based in Uganda. That's from the eastern part of Africa. That's making sustainable packaging from agricultural waste. Our vision is to put sustainable food packaging in the hands of millions across the African continent. So Africa definitely is widely considered as a beautiful place. As you can see that beautiful picture in the background, with 1.2 billion people. But one thing that's trying to destroy this beauty, and something we all interact with, is plastic pollution. But its impact in sub-Saharan Africa is significantly escalated because of the very low recycling rate, because we don't have infrastructure to collect and recycle on large scale in most of the countries that we are from. So these sites are a common site in major cities across the African continent. So compostable food packaging has been fronted as a solution to combating the effects and the impacts of plastic pollution. But such packaging made from different types of agricultural waste that I'm going to get to later in my presentation significantly costs more. So it's about 40 to 50% more expensive than the existing plastic alternatives. So many of our early adopters, like restaurants, cannot afford the switch to these compostable food packaging alternatives. For example, just from the previous image, each of those goes for about 9 cents per piece if you're in the US or in the EU, or in China as well, where they are all manufactured and being taken on due to regulation and also customer demand. But this same piece to a restaurant here costs about 14 US dollar cents per piece. So this change is not sustainable. So what we at Higher Bioplastics have come up with is compostable food packaging from agricultural waste materials. Currently, we're using banana fibers and also cassava starch. We started off, and maybe just to give you a brief intro, we started off as a research project looking to upcycle water hyacinth, the invasive species that grows on most freshwater bodies across Africa. We were converting that into any kind of packaging materials that we could create. But due to certain technical difficulties, we were able to explore other feedstocks, and we have come up with what we're currently doing right now, which makes our product significantly cheaper. So we currently make trays, containers, disposable party plates, and these serving grocery stores and some restaurants as well. So compostable food packaging, basically what that means is this packaging after use can be thrown in either two things, which is a compost pit. So in your backyard, you can throw it there and it decomposes after 30 days. Or two, it can be industrially composted. So it can be turned into manure. And there's a variety of different types of compostable food packaging, some from PLA, which is polylactic acid, some from wheat straw fiber, which remains after the wheat has been harvested, recycled paper, bamboo, bagasse or sugarcane fiber. All these are the different types of feedstocks that are used to make compostable food packaging. But what we're working with is a blend of the fibers and the starches, which makes our products significantly cheaper and also able to be set up in different geographical locations. So we use, and we have experimented with cassava starch, potato starch, wheat starch, as well as from the fiber side, sugarcane bagasse waste, also banana stem fibers and wheat straw fibers. And I've created a proprietary mix that helps us to create the packaging products that I've shown you. So the key advantage here is our product is significantly more cost competitive to the existing plastic products, especially the styrofoam trays, which are being used where we are currently working. So this is just a brief, I would say, an image to show what exactly we're working with visually, so that you can remember this when you leave the workshop. And each of our products goes for about $6 per piece, which is comparable to the styrofoam trays that go from $5 to $7 per piece. And what makes this possible is the short and closed supply chain, where we are upcycling waste materials in our immediate environment. So how we envision this is each of these units that we set up is small scale. So basically working out of 2 containers. And due to its low cost, we believe that these units can be scaled across different geographical locations, upcycle the fiber, the waste fibers and the waste materials that are fiber-based in those regions and turn them into packaging that can easily be sold and absorbed by the African consumer who, to be honest, cares about price the most. So this is a $500 million market opportunity. And yes, so we have done R&D for about 2 years, started off at Makerere University, and with support from different programs we've been through, the Wege Foundation, so someone here from there, the Wege Prize, and also the Halcyon Incubator. And then in the end, we're able to get connected to the USDA Department of Agriculture, who have done similar research where they're using starch and fiber-based inputs to make biodegradable packaging. So this significantly reduced our processing time, increased and improved on our product quality. And now in October, we are scaling from the mini pilot that we had to about 7,000 products that we shall be able to manufacture daily. So if I'm to talk about the circular economy and compostable packaging, some of the biggest barriers we have faced and see already are being the products or the compostability of the products being used for the incorrect applications, lack of regulation consistency. So in most African countries, there's no regulation that is accelerating the transition to sustainable packaging alternatives. If you're to look like in the EU, where the Plastic Pact and different policies have been put in place to accelerate the transition from petroleum-derived plastic to sustainable alternatives, that is existent here. So there's no incentive. And with most of this sustainable packaging costing slightly more, the incentive from the consumer's side is just not there. And also, similarly to how we don't have recycling infrastructure, we also don't have compostability or composting sites. So we don't have industrial composting sites or facilities across most African countries, which means that fronting compostability of the product as a solution where you're looking at it being industrially composted is going to lead to the same dilemma faced with plastic, because the infrastructure to collect effectively and treat this is just not there. So that's why our products, we focus on them being home compostable, meaning that in your pit at home, you can, after you've used your tray that was used to pack the fruits or cakes or anything, you can throw it in the pit and it transforms into manure. Yes, so I think that's just in a nutshell what we're doing. Open to any questions later on and sharing more about what we're doing. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mark. I think you've also touched on a few things we'll look at in this discussion. While there are opportunities, there are also significant barriers for the packaging industry within Africa. I also enjoy the closed loop system that Higher Bioplastics has, which is at the center of circularity. I will quickly go into, so there are some questions again in the chat for Mark. Please feel free to continue posting your questions. We'll tackle them during the Q&A section of today's program. In addition to our case studies, we have a group of panelists that will be sharing or discussing packaging and circularity. Our first panelist that I will introduce is Alex Kuvasu. He is a circular economy initiative lead at WWF Kenya and currently managing Danida Market, which is a waste value project in coastal Kenya. I'll stop there and let him introduce himself. Welcome, Alex, and thank you for joining us today. Kindly take the floor and introduce yourself to everyone. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Radia. So like you rightly put, I work for the Worldwide Fund for Nature, and we are, of course, guided by our global initiative called the No Plastics in Nature, where we would want to see no plastic in nature by the year 2030. And we're working across the three pillars of global governance, plastic smart cities, and most importantly, engaging with businesses to try and transform their business practices to transit from or to move towards ensuring that all their packaging is either reusable, compostable, or recyclable. So I am currently based out of Mombasa and working on a couple of projects like you rightly put, and I'll be looking forward to the conversations towards trying to progress and to accelerate the transition to a circular economy, specifically for packaging materials. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Alex. We look forward to your contribution today. Our next panelist, or I'll be introducing next, is Akshay Shah. He is the board chair of KEPRO and SIL Africa Group Executive Director. Welcome, Akshay. Kindly introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. Pleasure to be here on today's panel. I've got about 30 years experience in manufacturing and designing plastic packaging, mostly all rigid, 100% recyclable, in countries like Tanzania, Kenya, Ethiopia, Nigeria, Uganda, Mozambique. I've also been quite active over the last 5 years, championing circular economy, transitioning to that framework through legislative partnership. And just generally sort of looking at, how the whole industry sector, public and private, can come together to make this transition a reality.
Thank you very much. Actually, we look forward to your contribution today. Our next panelist is Anna B. Pretorius. Anna B. graduated in polymer science at Stellenbosch University. She also formed her own company, Plastics, with an X, 911 in 2007, and is the face behind the annual statistics for the local plastics industry. Welcome, Anna B. We're happy to have you. Kindly introduce yourself.
Thank you so much, Raja, for the opportunity. Yes, and I think you've heard I'm very biased towards plastics because I do believe it's a brilliant material. But we as consumers have to take up our responsibility and be accountable for every bit of waste that we generate. So since February this year, I work for Plastics SA. We engaging with various communities and organizations to make sure that plastics comes to its full value and is valued right till the end, even if it's regarded waste by certain people. And I'm looking forward to the discussions.
Looking forward to your contribution as well. Our next panelist is Dr. Pippa Norton. She is the director of TGH ThinkSpace and the director and principal consultant at Greenhouse. I think I'll stop there and then let.
Hi. Sorry, now you've just frozen at the worst possible time, but I hope you can hear me.
We can hear you.
Okay, great. Sorry, Radia, just froze there. So I'm Pippa. I'm a consultant, founder of the two companies that Radia already mentioned, based here in Cape Town in South Africa. And I'm not a packaging expert, and I'm not even a circularity expert. So I am, in fact, my background's life cycle assessment. So that, for a very brief nutshell, life cycle assessment is a tool, sort of an environmental analysis tool, where you look at the environmental impacts of a product all the way over its whole life cycle, or what we say cradle to grave, from its production all the way through its manufacturing, importantly its use and any reuse, and then its final disposal. And the idea is really that you want to improve whole product systems. And of course, packaging comes into just about every product system. So I find myself working a lot with packaging, even though, you know, as I said, I'm actually not setting out to work with packaging, but they do form such a critical part of just about every product systems, and especially food systems. And I think now, and more with circularity and all these really new innovative materials, innovative business models, innovative systems, it's really important to have a tool like LCA that can really look at the whole system and say, are we really improving this whole sort of getting food to our households? We're not just sort of maybe reducing the packaging and possibly just transferring our impact somewhere else. So that's where my intersection comes in. Yeah, and yeah, thanks for the invite and look forward to the discussions.
Thank you very much. We are honored to have you. And our last panelist, or rather, we've already been introduced to Mark and Victor, who will be completing our panel discussion today. I think to sort of go back to the beginning, I think it's important to find out what the research around circularity is. It's always important to discuss things based on data. We heard earlier Victor talking about how data is important in this industry. And so I would like to go back to Alex and then Pippa to just, in broad terms, what does the research around packaging and circularity look like? What are the current trends? You know, what are the current trends? Even within the trends, what opportunities have come out from research? And also what challenges and barriers have we been able to identify? So I'm not sure. I think I will start with Alex and then move to Pippa on this question.
So thank you very much, Radia. And I would speak specifically from the plastic side of things, because I think it's the most visible or it epitomizes our relationship with packaging. And I would say that since, of course, its invention and its production, it is still touted one of the most versatile and robust materials. And for that very same reason, it's quickly turning out to be a problem. And given even from the quote that I had earlier, is that it is a human invention, and it is this same brains that are actually also trying to ensure that the invention does not kind of overpower us and all the effects and the impacts, the negative that we are experiencing in our environment. So I would say in terms of research and specifically around circularity for plastics, I think it is growing and expanding with a lot of learnings, so more of learning curves along the way. And what we are seeing is, even at the global level, the reason why, for example, we are having the discussions at the highest level of the UN Environment UNEA 5.2 and the Global Legally Binding Agreement, for example, is equally to say that as much as, for example, climate change brought the Paris Agreement, the 2015 moment, then plastic also has created that moment specifically for that packaging. So I think it is an area of great concern at different levels, whether you're looking at it from a village point of view where people utilize plastic and are wondering where their packaging went to, and now it's single use and all that, to the global level where we are seeing our oceans teeming up with a lot of plastic and actually also ending up in our, I would say, in our diet, as it were. So I would want to stop at that and maybe introduce my other colleagues to speak to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. I think Pippa, on the research side, what sort of innovations are emerging outside of Africa, which could be of interest to local manufacturers?
Sure, I think, yeah, it's really broad. I mean, I think just from my more narrow viewpoint, maybe of looking at what life cycle assessments can say around on different packaging systems, refer to a work we're doing with United Nations Environmental Program and their life cycle initiative, which has been a review of food packaging and what life cycle assessments can tell us. So maybe I'll just use that. And there, I think it's interesting, has been showing that it's really less about switching between materials. So there's lots of different, like we've seen already from today, there's some great new and innovative materials. But ultimately, often what comes out best is a reusable packaging system. So actually, no, that's incorrect. What comes out best of all is to eliminate packaging. So first of all, there's nothing like not having the packaging in the first place. So buying something like whole fruits, you can just avoid any packaging. That's always going to be the best solution. And then the reusable packaging, especially in second, sort of in transit packaging, crates, that kind of thing, you often see reusable packaging models and really new, innovative, returnable packaging models. Something like we see with the Loop, which is a sort of a supermarket high-end packaging where you can kind of take it home and then bring it back again and they refill it. And really there, it's a whole different kind of business model that's needed, but those often in the correct context have been shown to be lower across their life cycle than switching between materials, where often that is very context dependent. And I think, yeah, really big coming out of a big meta-analysis is that we're never going to recycle ourselves out of this problem. It's really around a systemic approach and decreasing the amount that we use. So that is speaking then more to reusable systems. And there's often more variation between materials. You can't always say that plastic is better than cardboard or cardboard is better than plastic, because it often just depends on the context that they're being used in. whether there's recycling in that market, what if there's demand for the recycled material, so it's being used in new products, then, you'll get a different, so you can't globally say, plastics is better than cardboard or vice versa, or any new bioplastic material or any other material. It really needs to be evaluated within the context, its own market context. So yeah, lots I could add, but
thank you. I like we're not going to be able to, although recycling is important, I think we won't recycle our way out of the waste that packaging creates. And it's important to think about, as you've rightly put it, the entire system and the design of the packaging to be able to improve circularity in the packaging industry. I think to speak to that, Pippa, would you also, do you have any statistics on what research says about the trade-off between food packaging versus shelf life, for example? You talked earlier about sometimes the cost is put on something else. Which one is more important, preserving the food or having a sustainable packaging?
Yeah, that's always a good point to keep in mind with packaging, is really, and really coming from the system view, is really you want your food product to arrive at your consumer, and especially with high environmental impact products like beef, meat and milk and those sort of things. The packaging actually can take a really small percentage of the whole overall environmental impact. So I think, and often the statistic I often give out is that in a 2-liter plastic milk bottle, the milk inside, the carbon footprint of the milk is only about like a tablespoon or 2 of the actual carbon footprint of that milk bottle. So that, it's really all about the milk, not about the packaging. And really what you want to do in the end of the day is make sure you have packaging that gets your product to the consumer. But that doesn't mean we should just ignore the packaging, absolutely. But it does mean we must always take the whole system into account and make sure that any, innovation that we do doesn't increase food loss or food waste, because then you've just undone any good you might have just managed to put in by redesigning the packaging. I think another really interesting example was a packaging where they changed to a meat packaging. There was a tube, but the consumers couldn't actually get all the mince out of that. So it was like polony packaging, so if you keep 2% of your meat mince stays in your packaging and ends up getting chucked away with that packaging, the fact that the packaging is nice and light really didn't help at all. Actually, your overall environmental impacts of that packet of mince has really just gone up and not down, because your change in packaging was so, it's a few percentages, whereas not at all as big as the change in wasting more meat. So that, and also again, the trouble with this, it's always so context is dependent. So it's very different for different food types. So that's, as I said, especially the meat, dairy products, those sort of food products. On the other end, it could be the reverse actually, where really you want as little packaging as possible. So certain dry goods and that, it isn't the same argument. There we really do need to be minimizing packaging. So we shouldn't be having cereals in a plastic bag and then in a box, really where the box is nothing more than a sort of a branding for the brand with nice place to put your game in and eye-catching design. It really doesn't need to be there in the same degree. So it's not the same argument across all food products either. So it really needs to be looked at product by product.
It does need to be looked at product by product. I think the packaging industry is so vast. The discussion is so large because everything requires different kinds of packaging. So I don't think there's a one size fits all solution. But I think I would like to hear from Mark and Victor, who are running businesses within Circularity. How have you been, specifically to Mark, considering that your project, or rather your business started as a research project, how have you been able to bridge the gap between research and actual work? What are some of the things you've been able to implement, and what have you not been able to implement? So I'll start from Mark and then move to Victor.
Yes, thank you so much. So from my point of view, research definitely is the backbone of creating something new, but it comes with so many challenges which are enhanced if you are coming out from or doing research, for example, from Sub-Saharan Africa. So, for example, in Uganda, we do not have existing labs that can certify or be used in doing some R&D of packaging materials, because most of the engineering we have is geared towards the more fundamental engineering, which is mechanical, cars, gears, and stuff like that. So what we were able to do was, first of all, having a proof of concept, and that we started off from water hyacinth, where we were able to collect a lot of this hyacinth from nearby water body called Lake Victoria, and then convert that into our first initial MVPs, MVP meaning minimum viable prototype. So these prototypes are what we use to see if there's enough interest in a product that can be used for packaging. So you have to define it as a product that can be used for packaging. And if people are interested in the story and the benefits to the environment. So just from our early feedback, we realized, yes, people are interested, but then cost is the main issue. And then two, apart from doing this research costs a lot of money. So this is something we actively, and up to now still actively applying for grants, applying for pitch competitions, appearing on such panels so that we can get wider visibility about the work we're doing, so that we can be able to sustain the operation. So this is another gap that I would say that needs to be filled by you, the entrepreneur or the researcher who's engaged in the research that you're doing. So those two barriers coupled with are mainly what makes you overcome that is the interest from the market, the people you want to make the product for, and also your belief in the vision of what you're creating. So I would say scaling from research definitely is something that that requires a lot of funding, and also requires a lot of genuine interest, because that's what's going to attract early stage investors. So I would say publicity, and also putting your head down and focusing on the work and creating a product that would be acceptable is the main thing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark. Victor, is there anything you'd like to contribute there on bridging the gap between research and actual work? What are some of the gaps that you found as somebody starting a business in this sector? What are some of the gaps that you identified information-wise and information-wise, data-wise? You did mention data being a big thing in the way GIVO runs.
Okay, yeah, thanks a lot for that. For us, for me generally, yeah, the research was a big factor. I have a background in accounting, and then you know, when I became an entrepreneur, I started as a tech entrepreneur. So I don't really act without data. So I think from inception, from our first workshop, the design thinking workshop we started this program at, there were a few things that the research had already shown, right? So, for example, the fact that there's plastic everywhere, right? This is not an urban problem, it's not a rural problem, it's an everywhere problem, right? Again, data shows that there is plastic between, there is enough plastic. There's about, I mean, in Nigeria, for example, there's about 300 to 500 kilograms of plastic in every 2 to 5 kilometer radius. This is research that's fed into our business model. So this is why we only work in a 2 kilometer radius, because again, the research has shown that there's enough plastic to sustain the center, for example, right? Things around voluminosity. So again, one of the biggest challenges with plastic recycling is the voluminosity of the product, right? The research has shown that contributes to the cost, because a 5-ton truck is carrying 1 ton of recyclables, plastic, when it could be carrying more. So this is why in our centers, we process into a finished product, right? So again, we shred, which reduces the volume, which also increases the value of the material, right? So for us, and of course, also in the cost, diesel is a big part of cost of operations for recyclers, right? In our model, we use solar, so we don't have any energy cost, right? So our margins are higher. And so, yeah, for us, we were able to, from inception, been able to use research to feed into all activities. And for example, in our organization right now, we have, I'm a CEO, we have a CTO, but the other C-level team we have is a chief data officer. So those are the important things right now, because every step we are, every community we're in right now, we're doing a lot of things around community engagement, because even in terms of the incentives you're providing to customers, in terms of trying to create systemic change, how do you communicate to different people in different communities? No community is the same in Africa, right? You might have a rich community and a poor community side by side, but you need to communicate the same messages, and all of this is research. So from my perspective, it's fundamental, it's instrumental, and I mean, I wouldn't be in this space if there wasn't research, and it's one of the key things that we're also working on going forward, providing the databases to enable this research be more targeted, be more consistent, because the entire industry needs the data and research to progress.
All right, thank you, Mark. I'm sure, and I hope that there are academics on the call and people who are interested in furthering research in the packaging industry with a focus on circularity, because from what we're hearing, it's very difficult to make decisions without information. I did hear a lot on recycling in the packaging industry, and even though we talked about it not being the only solution or the solution we should be thinking about, I would like to hear more about it, and I'll move to Anabe. Anabe, you regularly visit recyclers in Africa and plastic networks and associations. What do you consider some of our biggest plastic problems hindering the transition to a circular economy in Africa? To add to that, what is your opinion and what are the quick win solutions to these problems?
You talk about many questions in one. So let's talk about the barriers or the challenges for recyclers. And I'm definitely more familiar with the South African recyclers. I've only visited a few in Kenya and in Ghana. But if we look at the South African recyclers, your commercial businesses, so center that actually takes that material, size reduce it, wash it, clean it, and turn it into a raw material again. All of their processes are based on volume. So they need a specific material in bulk. And where we're definitely lacking, and it becomes evident on a daily basis, is the actual collection of our waste. And that's why I love the GIVO model, and I'll definitely be in contact with them as well. So how do we get the material from my kitchen waste bin all the way to the recycler? And that system is not streamlined. That system is not in a good way. So if one takes something where we have essential packaging, and I agree with Pippa, we mustn't just package for the sake of making it look nice. If it's not functional and it's not protecting the contents, then we really should consider if we need it. So how do we get the packaging, or we're talking packaging today, because if we rely on the value of the article, someone is bending down and picking it up. And if it's a tiny little sachet or portion pack, that thing has so little value that you're not going to use human energy to bend down, pick it up, and carry it somewhere. So we need to have collective systems. We need to have a place where once it's used, it can be discarded in and then taken to a central spot where you have everything that's there where you can sort now to have those volumes. We sit in South Africa with recyclers of small scale plastics. In other words, let's talk expanded polystyrene. No one picks it up because it's so lightweight, where the recyclers have end markets for it, they have products for it, but they cannot get enough. We see the same with the company in Pretoria recycling chips packets. At the moment, he's converting his line so he can take other materials as well, because he's not getting enough. Is to get the smaller, lightweight products from where it has been used, consumed, discarded, to the actual reprocessor. And I think that's our single biggest challenge. And yes, I saw the comment earlier on, is the packaging belonging to the consumer or the brand owner? The fact is, it's the consumer that's actually throwing it away, that says, I've done with it, either clean it and reuse it. And for the reusable, my comment is really around, do we have water? Because I'm watching some people cleaning out packaging for reuse, and it's done under a running tap, pure, beautiful, clean water. So if we go towards the reusable options, we definitely have to educate and train and saying, how do we clean this also energy efficient and resource efficient? So yeah, I think I'll stop there for the moment, but we know recycling and no circular economy is going to be effective if we don't look at it right from where it is being used, consumed, thrown away, and how do we collect it from there to get it into the circular system. Because they don't have wheels and they don't have motors and GPS systems to say, well, I need to go back to that spot. It requires energy to get it back into the system.
I agree. Also, going back to what Pippa mentioned earlier, it's pointless to look at one part of the problem, just maybe at the end or in the middle. It's important to consider the entire system. And I think the entire system could also include our education system within Africa, advocacy programs, because we can have all these things put into place, but if the consumer himself or herself does not understand why they should be doing what they're told to do, then the entire system fails. So I agree completely. I think continuing on this trajectory of barriers and where the problem begins, I will move to Akshay, who is actually what we would consider part of the problem, plastic packaging manufacturer. Akshay, why, as a plastic packaging manufacturer, are you championing the transition to a circular economy in Africa?
Because it's the right thing to do. There's no other way to say it. And if we look far enough into the future, any packaging manufacturer who doesn't commit to circularity is going to go out of business.
And in your experience, what is the best way to achieve this transition to a circular economy as a plastic?
Yeah, I mean, let's say we've been in business for about 60 years. I've been running the business for 30 years. Trying to go about as an individual company or between my company and my customers to move towards more sustainable, recyclable, circular products is a very, very slow pace, right? I mean, it'll move, but it'll move at a snail's pace. So the best way to really accelerate this is to look at the entire consumer package sector as a holistic system. Identify all the people in the circular value chain, even though the value chain may not exist today, but identify who they are. And then, essentially get everyone to realize that no individual stakeholder in the value chain can achieve transition to circular economy on their own. Government can do it on their own. No private sector player can do it on their own. and no individual consumer can do it on their own. No matter how responsible they are, they can put it in the right bin, but if that material doesn't get to the right place and there isn't value for that material, then nothing's going to change. So it's the best way to do it is really a systemic approach, and a systemic approach really needs a combination of public and private partnership through legislation. And that's where the model of PRO, Producer Responsibility Organization, that's where it comes in. And also where EPR schemes for each individual material comes in. But PRO is then created to manage multiple EPR schemes.
Thank you, Akshay. Still sticking to that, are you aware of any success stories of people who've transitioned to circular economy within the packaging industry?
So in Kenya, Tanzania, even Ethiopia, glass bottles for beer and soft drinks have been around for as long as I remember. They haven't shifted to single-use packaging. So they are returnable, they are recyclable infinitely. Of course, they're not reusable, but those models can evolve, where you can take a glass bottle to turn it upside down, wash it, and then refill it. But that's a great example of something that is already circular in nature, and as a business model. And even when the broken glass comes back to the glass bottle manufacturer, they have to put 40% of cullet, which is the crushed glass, in order to reduce the energy cost of producing a new glass bottle. So there are already, let's say, commercial reasons to keep reusing that material and keep it circular. The same doesn't exist in other areas such as plastic or paper. So one has to bring commercial reasons, because just doing something for the good of the environment apparently is not enough, right? That's just like putting lipstick on a pig. So there has to be commercial reasons to drive motivation in private sector. And those commercial reasons are essentially the equivalent of putting EPR fees on materials that are single use, materials that are difficult to collect, difficult to recycle, should have a higher EPR fee. And the higher the fee, the higher the motivation for the producer or the user of the packaging to move towards a more recyclable, reusable, and returnable packaging. It's simply using economic leverages and economic penalties to get that behavior change to happen. So in Kenya, there's a big success story, I would say. Like Kepro was born out of a public-private relationship where the political will was there to actually make this happen. Otherwise, they were just gonna, the government was ready to ban, all kinds of plastic packaging. They already banned plastic bags. Next was going to be PET bottles. Next was going to be injection molded yogurt cups, and so on and so on and so on, without actually understanding life cycle analysis, right? They were not going to understand that, okay, if you're going to ban the PET bottle, is the glass bottle going to be better for the environment or worse for the environment? So just going in that direction could have ended up with unintended outcomes. So therefore, the private sector actually woke up and said, okay, we'd better partner with the government. And the good thing in Kenya is that we had a willing government who actually cares for the environment.
All right, thank you. Actually, I like the financial inclusion part of it. I think which I'm going to segue into it. It's good to care for the environment, and it is great to care about where the earth will end up in a few years. But does it make financial sense for the person that's spending energy doing this thing? And I would like to go into that a little bit. What are the opportunities for green jobs? What are the opportunities for work in the circular packaging industry. I think I'll go back to Mark and then to Anabe. I think rather to Victor. Victor, could you share what or how your business has been able to promote financial inclusion within Africa, or within Nigeria rather?
Okay, yeah, thanks. So for us, I think one of the things that we try to focus on early, in fact, the name GIVO is garbage in, value out. So that's an acronym. Yeah, it took us 2 weeks to come up with that name. So yeah, basically the intention from the beginning has always to try to drive value, right? And to be seen as valuable. So in our communications, in our branding, in everything we do, I mean, waste or trash, it has to be absent, right? And so also when we had considered providing incentives or rolling out an incentive scheme, it had to be significant enough to drive change, right? And that is a problem with a lot of incentive scheme that exists right now. And so yeah, right now we pay about 15 cents per kilogram, which is about 300% of the market value that other people get. And that's just one aspect of it. So yes, we provide an incentive, and again, this is paid digitally, which they can access on USSD or through an app. But the more important part is what that does, because at the end of the day, the recyclables are a commodity, right? And when you have an individual deposit a commodity regularly, he starts to have a history, a historical record. And so for us, that is another way we use in de-risking this individual, because we have some experience of doing this in other industries. So what we do with the deposits from our depositors is also then use that historical record to provide them things like finance for loans and for insurances, or for insurance, because we're able to do that based on the commodities that they've traded, which are assets, and this is the way credit is given in other parts of the world, but it's also about creating systems to enable things like this. So for example, when you hear about children being able to pay for school fees with plastics, there's so much joy around it. I have nothing against that, right? But again, what we're trying to do is create a system so that this is this is normal, because again, plastic is a commodity, it's oil, right? And it should be able to be traded, and so those are ways we are using our system and our product to provide financial services in that community. So I did mention that in each community, again, we operate in a 2-kilometer radius. We employ about 10 to 15 staff in each community. We also provide about $10,000 in incentives per year. Now think about that. In a 2-kilometer radius, we provide $10,000 in incentives. That trickles down, right? And that provides a historical record to get loans and other things to add on to that. So again, this is the role of technology in waste management, right? Before I left, I just want to hop on the last thing that Shah had spoken about, and some people touched really about the role of EPR in unlocking all this, and for us, this is the long-term goal, because I think the conversation around EPR is, again, I mean, sorry for beating a dead horse, is the lack of data, right? Because if you can't track productivity and production, then how can you track consumption and EPR? So in the advanced world, right, they have, again, there's mandatory releases of information, right? Or there's ways to track consumption from credit cards and things like that. In Africa, right, 95% of the market is an open market. So for GIVO, right, especially from the collection centers and with the use of computer vision, what we are aiming to do is to be able to tag materials and products to people and to locations, which is the basis for data for any EPR scheme, right? So again, I can tell a Coca-Cola that today I collected 1 kilogram of your materials in this location from this individual, right? And all of this is leveraging on advanced technology. Again, this is, we're working with, for example, the University of Warwick on this particular project with the use of computer vision and blockchain to tag it through. So yeah, EPR is key to unlocking the rest of the value chain. Yeah, just wanted to put that there.
Thank you very, very much, Mark. sorry, Victor, and I will move to Anabe to also comment on what are the opportunities for green jobs. Victor is talking a lot on Victor's system relies on, and you can correct me here, there are incentives provided, but what can a person do by themselves? You know, what opportunities lie in this packaging industry? I do not have a lot of money to start a business, for example, but I want to contribute somehow. What is it that I can do? From your experience visiting all these different recyclers in the different countries.
I think at the end of the day, and one of the comments in the chat talks about if it doesn't make money, it's not worth it. And I think we really must stop lying to ourselves to say care for the environment and green jobs and green opportunities. We need to look at each of these things as a business opportunity. If it's a waste picker, he's doing it to earn an income. He's not doing it to clean the streets or to, so each person in that complete value chain must find that the reward for the effort is justified and therefore he can do it. Not even the commercial recyclers, and we have about 300 of those in South Africa, none of them is doing it for the environment. They're doing it because it's a sustainable business. And yes, overall, the saving is for the environment. But human people are just not guilty enough. We don't listen to our consciousness enough to say we can actually run a business on that. So what are the opportunities? And I think everyone needs to look at his own little environment. And I love that Victor says we look at a 2-kilometer radius. Because if I'm putting up a business and I depend on material that's 300 kilometers from me, I can tell you now it's not going to be sustainable. So what is in my immediate environment? And if I just take a couple of the examples in South Africa, and I know in Kenya as well, these companies taking plastics, mix it with sand, and sorry, soften the plastic so it's like a glue, mix it with the sand, and you end up with pavers or building bricks. Similarly, we can take expanded polystyrene. You have a wetting agent, you mix it with cement, and you build beautifully insulating bricks. We saw those sheets that's being manufactured. We have companies like that in South Africa making school desks. We have small little and I don't want to call them operations because they more literally bolt on top of a pile of localized waste, turning them, and I spoke this morning to a guy making diesel and shoe polish, for example, from mixed plastics waste. So those opportunities are definitely there. One just need to look at what is the environment I'm in, what is the volumes that's there, and what is my community looking for? Is it that we need pavers? Is it that we need basins to wash our clothes in? Is it for school desks? And you really just need to see what is there. And normally entrepreneurs don't need telling to what to do. They just need a little bit of help in saying, how do I kick off finance? And I think that's one of the big challenges in Africa, because we have great ideas, but how do you grow it to the next scale? And finance is a big stumbling block, because most of your bigger financial houses says, can you secure your incoming material? Can you tell me that you can definitely have 5 tons, 6 tons, 10 tons a month? Can you tell me where's your market? And dealing in startup businesses in waste, those two questions don't have answers. So your bigger financial businesses says, sorry, I can't help you. And that's, I think, where the green part comes in. If we really care as financing houses, as big corporates for the environment, how do we provide startup funding? And I'm the last person to say you need to fund a business for every kilogram out there. But how do we get businesses off the ground? with funding. To keep it going, to keep it sustainable, it needs to be self-funded, but that initial funding. Yeah, and I think someone else can add to what I'm saying. So I'll keep quiet.
Thank you, Anavi. That was insightful. I like that. Rather, I like the idea of looking around us and identifying the opportunities close to us and seeing what is it that I can do in my immediate environment, with my immediate resources to tackle this problem, rather than rather than trying to, it's good to borrow ideas from elsewhere, but rather trying to borrow ideas that are working in different contexts, that require all this funding and all this money. We'll quickly segue into our Q&A because we have a lot of questions for our panelists and our case studies, if there are no more contributions from the panelists. Okay, we'll quickly go into our Q&A, and some of the first questions I have.
Radia, Akshay
Yeah.
wanted to add one last comment, I think.
Oh, sorry, thank you.
And I'm also not sure if Pippa has some thoughts to share on data based on all of her life cycle assessment work.
Thank you.
Thanks. So just two important points I wanted to add. So everyone can understand what is a PRO, Producer Responsibility Organization. It's like a Robin Hood for the environment. You take money from the rich and give it to the poor. So that's the role of a PRO. Take money from the packaging users and then give that money to the waste management operators, which are the collectors, sorters, and recyclers. And what that actually does is that it shifts the economic value towards the waste management operations. And that sector, once money is coming into it, right, I don't think people like Mark or Victor are going to have any problem looking for money, right? They're going to become like the new Silicon Valley, with tons of money available because it is coming from, through the PRO, through the EPR fees, and then that money has to be spent. And it has to go to the people who are actually increasing the rate of recyclability and the rate of circularity. So I just wanted that to be clear that, a PRO can actually make the economic shift that would solve a lot of the problems. And then recycling and waste collecting and sorting, like all of that business really becomes the sort of new, value creation from an economic perspective.
Thank you, Akshay. I'm not sure, Pippa, if you had a follow-up comment.
I can. I can certainly quickly say, yeah, I think absolutely you can't do any interesting models or life cycles if you don't have the data. And I think that's where what Victor's talking about is really exciting, because that's really what you lack to be able to do studies that actually reflect what's on the ground. And a nod to Anavi as well. Anavi, we are avid consumers of your data that you put out with your plastics recycling report. It's one of our go-to things. So there's such a lack of data on waste. So as Anavi was saying, how can you plan if you don't know what's there? We just tried a few years ago to do a materials flow analysis of plastics through South Africa's economy, and it was just a nightmare, because especially the imported part. So what's being produced. And there's just a lack of waste characterization data. So you really need the other end, what's actually out there, so that you get all the imports. And it's surprising how how we could get 50% order of magnitude differences depending on the info that we put in. Really difficult. And no one believes a model that says, oh, well, my order, my uncertainty margin is like an order of magnitude. It's not acceptable. So absolutely. And I think, unfortunately, what happens is we tend to then model like ideal cases, so like as if this would be landfilled or as if this would be recycled, and then you get an answer, what looks as a good option based on a sort of a fantasy of what would be what could be happening, not what's really happening on the ground. So the more we can get the big data systems that are happening and coming in, absolutely, it will really be a game changer.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that, Pippa. If there are no more comments, and anything that we've thought of last minute as panelists, I will go into our questions. Some of our questions are for our case studies. So Mark, somebody would like to know, can hot food, right? Can hot food such as jellies be packed in your compostable packaging?
Yes, so currently our products are for dry food applications, which is why we're looking at fruit, vegetable packing of bakery products, and also other kinds of dry food. So at a festival party, that's kind of the product line we are focused on. And why this is so, to expand to the takeaway fast food industry, where requirements are ability to handle hot substances for extended periods of time, we have to add a coating to this. So this coating significantly increases the price. The coating per unit of the product costs about the same price as the product. So that would double the price of that product. So it's something we're looking. So we're active in R&D for this, and we have already successfully done some samples of our potential fast food packaging samples. But then if we were to look at cost, we are still sticking to what we're doing right now as we try to establish a larger base in our target market, which is Uganda. Thank you.
Thank you. There's a follow-up question on that. I think you might have answered it. Is the packaging for from biomaterials for food only? Is it only for food, and does it meet the food safety standards for packaging?
Yes. So the key things you're looking for in packaging to be safe for consumption is you don't want any migration. So migration is when you have substances moving between what you're packing and also your packaging. So we, from the research tests, the lab tests that we've done, the migration is at acceptable levels. And then two, when you're looking at also the inputs in making the product. So what we make sure is that in our final stage, we have, after the pulp and the fiber have been, and the starch have been heat pressed, so that's around 200 degrees Celsius. You get the packaging, which we pass through infrared. So infrared light UV kills any existing bacteria before we heat seal and pack in the packaging. So that's to ensure that the product that we're getting out is not contaminated by anything. So those are some of the measures that we're putting in to ensure that it's safe to be in contact with food.
All right, thank you. I have two more questions for you. In terms of energy consumption for production, would you say you're consuming more energy relative to plastic products? The person is thinking of objectives of circularity aligning with the 2050 net zero carbon emissions targets for different manufacturing industries. So yeah, would you say you're consuming more energy in producing your biodegradable products?
Yes. So in my former life, I was a salesman for my father's plastic manufacturing factory here in Uganda. So I kind of have very good understanding of the consumption, especially if you're looking at per unit product of plastic. So comparatively, we are consuming exactly the same amount of energy because we operate at the same temperature and conditions, similar motor sizes. But then the key difference here is when you look at the life cycle assessment. So the product or inputs are on average traveling less than 50 kilometers to our manufacturing site. So for countries like Uganda, which have just started oil production, but we don't have any oil currently available, the pellets, which HDP, PET, everything is imported from Iran, Saudi Arabia. So when you look at the emissions incurred, this is just a brief summary showing you the differences in the life cycles of both the products. If you're looking at the inputs, the outputs, and then end of life. So we have conducted LCS on our product. We're comparing it with the styrofoam, because that's our main competitor, styrofoam trays. And on average, in terms of emissions, we're about 50% less than those packaging styrofoam, which basically all their inputs are imported. So I would say, in a nutshell, in terms of energy, both our processes, plastic and what we're using, require the same amount of energy, but then along the life cycle, that's where our advantage is.
Radia, can I be cheeky and add something here as well?
Yes, please.
I will anyway, since I'm a facilitator. I think it's really important here as well to just say that research that the Ellen MacArthur Foundation did in partnership with Material Economics shows that transitioning to renewable energy and energy efficiency, although it's absolutely critical for us to get to net zero, that renewable energy and energy efficiency alone will not get us to net zero. So energy that production is really only part of the challenge to reaching net zero. The other challenge is the way that we make and use products, materials, and food, and the materials that we use that go into those. And this is where circular economy approaches is really critical. And circular economy addresses maybe 50% of that remaining 50% of emissions. And so although like talking about how much energy it takes to produce something is important, it's actually so much as well about the materials that we're using and the way that we make those products and what happens to them when they're no longer useful to us.
Thank you, Sarah. I don't know if there's a contribution there. Otherwise, I'm very conscious of our time and would really like to open the discussion so we can all interact with each other. Before that, I have a specific question for Victor. What is the financial model of the franchise system in your first presentation with regards to the women enterprise, and how sustainable is it?
Okay. Okay, I will try to answer this question. Okay, yeah. First of all, being in this space, I think for us it was we saw the numbers before we made the decision. Like I said, very, very data driven. I have a background in technology, and so for us, from literally from day zero, being in this space, the idea was, how can we do this at scale? Right? So it was about, how do we do this in a scalable way where we can remain technology providers in that sense. And that was how and why we have, again, focused on rolling out a youth and women-based model. Now, just some of the numbers, right? So the CapEx for each center cost about $30,000 to set up a center. The main source of revenue from that center is commodities trading, right, in the local market. Where a ton goes for about $500 per ton. Right now, we're doing about $90 to $100 metric tons a year, which is about $45,000-$50,000. So you have an ROI in a year thereabout. In terms of running costs, the incentives per year is about $10,000. The cost of salaries, again, is about $15,000. Now, by the way, everyone is paid well above the market rate. So the 10 to 15 staff that we have are actually employees. They are not contractors. They are not paid. They are paid salaries. They're also given health insurance and full benefits and overtime, right? So they are, again, more than well paid above the rate. But yeah, so in terms of running costs, about $15,000 for salaries. It's solar powered, so your energy costs are next to zero. The main machine that is in those centers, we have a shredder and a granulator, which might have a few repair costs, but are not significant. So all in all, each center can generate a profit of about $20,000 a year. And for us, that's a simple, it's a simple sell for our of franchisees, right? This is the potential of how much you can make a year. Again, it's about $10,000 to $20,000 a year in profit after they have taken care of all their expenses. Now, in Nigeria, the minimum wage is about $50 a month. $50 a month. And if you're telling I mean, the numbers make a lot of sense from that perspective. For Jivo, most of how we're going to generate our revenue, I mean, in case it hasn't been figured out already, is from the data that we collect, right? Because again, the way we collect our data, the platform we've built over the last 3 years, and we're continuing development on it, is helping us, or will enable us commoditize the data that we collect, so that we can benefit from things like the carbon credits, the plastic credits. We're currently doing an LCA with Chatham House to finalize some of these things. And so in the long term, that is where we generate revenue, while for the franchisees, their revenue comes from that commodity trading. Yeah, so that is how we're going at scale, and this is the plan for us. So yes, we'll be in a city close to you sometime soon.
Looking forward to it. Okay, so I'm very conscious of our time again, and really want the audience to interact with the panelists. So your questions have been noted, and I think contact details will be shared for the different panelists, and you can reach out to them to ask all these different questions. I will now open up the floor. If you would like to ask a direct question that has not been answered, or you would like to share, you would like to contribute or share a different comment, please put up your hand, and either Tash or myself and Sarah will note those hands and give you the floor. I think I noticed when I opened it up, Mr. Silava, Joseph Silava, your hand was up, if you're still with us on the call. That was one of the first hands I saw. No, okay. I will ask David. David, your hand is up. And then we'll move to Mohammed. David, your hand is up. You're welcome to speak.
Okay. Hope you can understand me. I hope you can understand.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'm Adjabon Kofido David. I'm a young climate scientist doing my master's degree in Burkina Faso, funded by WASCAL. So that's my presentation. So my question is talking about the circular economy. What I know, I have a background in economy before doing this master. So what I know about the circular economy is about the recycling, and also to minimize the emission and so on. So I heard one of the panelists, when he was talking, he talked about the using of solar energy and so on. So I wanted to know, by doing so, do they already assess their carbon footprint, so that they can know that the activity that they are doing is not emitting too much, so that they can look to another way to do it, so that they can reduce the amount of GHG they are emitting in the air. So this is the question.
Thank you very much. I think, Victor, that question was directed to you. If you can briefly answer the question.
Okay, thanks a lot. Yeah, I would say that this wasn't an easy conversation or an easy decision for us from very early on. So what we tried to do from inception was, again, I spoke about the whole story, but we knew that we had to use solar powers to power these things, right? But we had to have shredders and granulators in those centers, which are typically 3 horsepower, right? So again, it doesn't make sense, and solar doesn't connect. So we spent a lot of resources on R&D, but this was something that we were insistent on. And right now, I mean, again, I'm sure everyone understands how the diesel prices have gone in the last 4 or 5 months. We find ourselves having on average 30% higher margins than our competitors because we do not use any diesel or fuel in the system, in our operations, right? And talking about the LCA, which is, very important. So it's not just the LCA from the processing or the shredder manufacturing, right? Or the carbon from that. It's also the carbon from the fact that we are doing all our collections either by walking or by using electric tricycles, which are also powered in our center using our solar, right? So again, each of these carbon components that form part of the LCA are equally as valuable, right? And as Akshay Shah said earlier on, and for all of these things, it's always about the financial incentive. And for us, it's always about collecting that data to maximize the financial incentive that we can get from it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I hope that answered your question, David. Zachary, your hand is up. You're welcome to ask your question.
Hello, I hope I can be heard.
Yes.
Okay, so my name is Faisal Mohammed Zakari. I'm from Ghana. I'm into sustainability, just a new entry professional into the field. So I would like Akshay to help me out with this question. Sorry if I pronounce your name wrongly, sir. I'm really interested in the area of PRO and plastic credits to start with. So mostly the PRO activities, we know it goes alongside with the EPR activity, and which are mostly established by government as policy to drive this sustainability of any of these plastic issues. So I want to know how basically individuals, like an individual, can try to push this forward as an initiative or a business activity in promoting a greener environment as such, where it wouldn't be a government bringing it up, but an individual going into it as a business, where you try to take these plastics out, provide maybe revenues to people, and kind of have this circularity going on within social enterprising and being a business adventure. I don't know if you can help me out with that. Thank you.
Sure, thanks, Faisal. I think there's a fundamental thinking behind what makes a successful PRO. And I believe that is for that PRO to operate as a non-profit. The moment a PRO starts operating as a for-profit, and it also allows multiple PROs, you'll start creating competition where PROs will basically say, we will take the legal responsibility from you as a producer or packaging user, and we'll do it for you at a lower EPR fee. Then that lower EPR fee will put less money into the waste management ecosystem, which sort of then becomes a slippery slope, and ultimately doesn't achieve circularity. So the best thing to do is to think about, now, if a PRO must be non-profit, but then coming to your question, how can you as an individual consumer trigger a change or be a catalyst towards having a PRO in an environment where you operate? I think consumers can sort of vote with their wallet. If a product is not packaged in packaging that is contributing to an EPR scheme, don't buy that product, don't support that brand. Then the second thing is that if you're a company anywhere in the entire value chain, then lobby with your industry association to come together and volunteer to set up a PRO through a voluntary mechanism. And once the government sees that the industry is willing to do this, hopefully you've got the right sort of, willing government who wants to have a better environment for its citizens, then they can say, okay, well, we've got the right people with the right intention. They're willing to do it on a voluntary basis. But that allows free riders, right? Joy riders or free riders, because not everybody is going to pay the EPR fee. So then the role of the government is to now mandate it legally so that you don't have joy riders and free riders. So I think that's the way it goes from an Faisal, I hope I answered your question.
Are you still on the call? Zachary, was your question addressed? Okay, we'll move on. Hopefully, if there's still any questions or there's nothing, there's something that's unclear, hopefully you'll be able to share with us in the chat or after the program. Piotr, your hand has been up for a while. You're free to take the floor and ask your question or give your contribution.
Before Piotr jumps in, can I just, if people have missed it in the chat, our request is to keep your questions or comments to 1 minute or less to make sure that we can get round the room. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, and congratulations to ASEAN for this webinar. Really a good run up to the WCF soon in Rwanda. There are so many topics, and the chat was super lively. I hope we can also extract it and look at it later. What I wanted to comment only is the EPR. So to follow what Akshay said, I agree with you on so many points regarding regulation. Without EPR, things will not move forward. But I would not put really what you said, responsibility to consumers to vote with their wallet. What if consumers have nothing in their wallet, which is very often the case in Africa? So the regulation has to require upfront a modulated fee on EPR when it will be designed in Africa. Really, African countries are now introducing that. Many of them are actually, I would say, still experimenting with EPR. The better EPR can change things very much, but can also destroy things because it will be set up, the governance will be set up in a wrong way. What I wrote in the chat, the dumping of prices, where the PRO is simply a representative of the producers, then of course it will act on the behalf of producers, so it will be lobbying for that. So I don't want to talk more about that unless there was also a person, Alexis, his name, to comment on EPR. But the question to Victor, can I understand that your project is funded by Coca-Cola, which is kind of, no, okay, okay, so no question then, all right.
Yeah, I'll just provide clarity on that. Yeah, sorry, no, we have no funding with Coca-Cola, not whatsoever. But we got brought into this space through them. We had done some work in Kenya before, and I mean, we have a technology company. I have a technology company I am part of, and yes, so they, I mean, for all intents and purposes, the reason why it was important is because I mean, we had a high level understanding of the problem immediately we came in. I think that was something that helped us in our product. You know, when in a week you're able to have feedback from the Coca-Colas, the government, all the key stakeholders, it just helps create a solution. And this is kind of what we've done, a solution that takes care of a lot of the stakeholders in that chain. Yeah.
Thank you. I didn't quite understand your answer because what I wanted to show maybe to all the participants that probably what is happening in Nigeria with your project is when Coca-Cola is contributing to some project, but in the same way escaping or slowing down a mandatory regulation of EPR. And this might happen in many other countries too. Those incentives are great, but they cannot you know, restrict or take an attention away from a binding EPR that must be put on producers and should be a modulated fee EPR. And in any case, it is quite complicated. I invite you all to connect and we can more talk about setting a correct EPR system in African countries. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much for the insightful contributions. I think we'll invite you to be a panelist to one of our next workshops. I cannot see any more hands. Is there anyone that would like to ask specific questions that I may have missed?
Victor, was that you unmuting yourself because you wanted to?
Yeah. So let me just also complete on that. So yeah, just for avoidance of doubt, we have had a lot of interactions with again the stakeholders in this space, but we do not have any direct funding from any of the large FMCGs. Again, I am a very big advocate for EPR because, like I said, it would unlock a lot of the funding in this space. And yeah, what we are trying to do through our activities is to make sure people are held accountable. And I mean, the large corporations are held accountable for the waste in the communities and using technology to provide that traceability. And I think that's what we're trying to do here. Yeah.
Yeah, I think maybe Victor, I'd add that we need a range of policy instruments to make the system work, right? So we need policy instruments that support design, how we design packaging, so that can be reused, recycled, composted, etc. We need policy instruments that support having that infrastructure in place to collect and manage waste when it becomes waste, or resources when they can become secondary resources or be reused. We need to make the economics work for circular packaging. We need to be investing in skills, in research, development, and innovation. And we need policy instruments that force collaboration for system change, because if everyone works in silos and if each company just solves for themselves, then we're going to be in a system that doesn't work. So we really need to be talking about a range of policy instruments. And the UN Plastics Treaty is definitely like pushing us into that direction.
Yeah, and sorry, just also to add on that, something that Akshay said that again stuck to me, and this is very interesting to always understand motivations for organizations, for governments across Africa, you know, I mean, across the world. One of the major things they're looking for is revenue, right? And so yes, you know, sorry to be this way, but this is the driver, right? I mean, they're looking for good EPR systems, and I guess, you know, like you're saying, we need to, there has to be support. We are trying to work with some of the government agencies, but again, some of the experience is not quite here. And so, yes, there has to be systemic support to enable them roll this out, because this is revenue that can be used to develop the waste management systems over in this part of the world.
And just, I think, sticking on to the policy, on the policy trajectory rather, Alex, would you be able to contribute on what kind of policies are required, especially to promote inclusion in the in this industry?
Yeah, so I think my final point is just to emphasize what my colleagues have said, specifically under the EPR. I think for Kenya, the lesson has been that we started off with no policy at all. Then we came into more of voluntary aspects of companies putting in money into the exchequer, and then money actually not getting to where it's supposed to be. Then came the voluntary EPR scheme, and now we are actually on the verge of getting a mandatory EPR. So with EPRs world over, if it is not mandatory, then that is where it actually dies a natural death. And we are happy that in Kenya, we are pushing for a mandatory EPR. So with the mandatory EPR, it will be an equivalent of, if you break a law, then you are liable. So a company would be liable to making sure that they pay up. So I believe ultimately it boils down to governance. And we know, like I've seen in the chart around there, that most African countries are not really very keen on enforcement of the beautiful policies that are always enacted. So with EPR, as it is being touted and being proposed across the continent, then the key question always has to be, how accountable is it going to be? And with accountability, we are looking at how can we leverage of technology, for example, to ensure that if a manufacturer is supposed to participate in EPR, then there has to be records, for example, to see how much product actually went into the production and then how much came out. Because we fear, for example, if there isn't correct reporting of input that goes in and or the amount of packaging that actually goes out into the environment, then the EPR might be interfered with. And that's why I'm happy KEPRO, for example, and also the other partners within Kenya are keen on ensuring that there is maximum accountability in terms of what is going in versus what is going out. Otherwise, some companies, like we know in tax evasion and things, they would underreport, and that way would just exacerbate the problem that we have. And lastly, I think there is also a need for regional integration in terms of policy formulation. For example, in Kenya, there was a ban of a particular material, but our neighboring countries continued to produce the same packaging material. So in a way, the material kept on crisscrossing through the porous borders. So if you're looking, for example, the East African community is legislating on a particular aspect of, for example, making sure that an unnecessary packaging is disallowed in the market, then it needs to also look at the region and whether that is workable and it will be implemented. And that's why, for example, the Global Legally Binding Agreement instrument would be a key document to actually set a level playing field for all players across the world to ensure that we are playing by the same rules. And then from there, each country can take on individual action plans to ensure that we have a properly managed packaging and a circular economy for that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much, Alex, for I think what will be a wonderful closing. I think one of the things I hear a lot when we're having these discussions is cross-region collaboration and sharing and borrowing ideas. I think it's pointless for us in this industry to work in silos, and it's also pointless to reinvent the wheel. It's always good to know what's happening in different contexts and try to replicate what's happening within our own regions. The time is now 4:56. I think if there are any questions that have not been answered, we will, Lara will share the contact details for the different panelists, and you can get in touch with them directly. There will also be a one-pager that will be shared, capturing a lot of the things that we spoke about today. Thank you very much for being a great audience and a great panel. I will now hand over the discussion back to Sarah to close for us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you to our panelists. Thank you to Radia for moderating the discussion and the questions so beautifully, and to all of you who joined us today and contributed to this really fruitful discussion. It's been great to see such an active chat and to hear from so many of you during the open discussion towards the end of the session. I really hope that we managed to get through all of your questions. If we didn't, I'm sorry, there's just never enough time, is there? But the conversation should definitely not stop here. You know that we've been recording the session, and we will share the recording as well as a summary document of the learnings and some conclusions from the session with everyone that has registered. And really the aim of that is to further knowledge sharing in the plastics and packaging sector. So feel free to forward that summary document on to whoever you think would value those lessons from today's session. For anything World Circular Economy Forum related, including these workshops or the African studios that I mentioned at the beginning of today's session, please feel free to contact us on our World Circular Economy Forum email address, which is on the screen. And I think someone will also paste that in the chat so you can copy and paste it. Lastly, to close the session, after we close it, you'll see a survey pop up with a few questions that we'd like you to answer for us. It should really just take 1 minute. And that's because we're really invested in making sure that these sessions are great and that they're really kind of targeted to the audience that comes. So please do give us your feedback. We'd love to hear from you and to make sure that the next workshops really are well suited to the information that you're looking for. We'd really appreciate that. So with that, I will close today's meeting. On behalf of myself and the African Circular Economy Network team, thank you so much for coming. This really, in a way, is like a dream come true for African Circular Economy Network to be part of World Circular Economy Forum, and it's because of all of this energy on the continent and beyond. So thank you so much for joining us today. Keep well and keep safe until next time. Thanks.
Bye, everyone.